shut up and come heal my warrior. Carry on. Like, a lot of people go into CrossFit and end up finding something a lot more specialized that they enjoy. For instance, Samantha Wright, who you can Google, was a CrossFitter, but she decided she wanted to get into Olympic weightlifting because of the exposure that she got from CrossFit. And then you've got a lot of people who go into strongman competitions off CrossFit, a lot of people who get into CrossFit and decide they like the gymnastics angle more, and so they start doing more gymnastics stuff. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great way to involve people physically, but at the end of the day, it's not going to breed anybody who's really specialized like an Olympic weightlifter. So
it's a starting place, not an ending place.
Wait,
yeah,
who is an Olympic weightlifter?
Me.
You are?
Yes.
Chops and I both just got certified, and we will be trying out for the 2000 XX Games in the near future.
See, I would believe Chops. You be the way he said that. What? Dude, the way
when you said Tex-Mex Games, it's like you can't involve a name of food in like a particular type of Olympic competition.
Don't tell me what I can and can't do.
Listen, there are many different kinds of Olympics. Some of them involve beer. Some of them involve all right?
Yes,
we all
true.
have our talents.
I was going to say you be the Special Olympian.
Are you trying to say I should be running around in a Packers helmet as if my name was Kelso?
Hey, whoa. Packers helmet? It's nothing special.
You're not a Packers fan, are you?
Yes.
Yeah. See, we all have our downsides.
Thank you for joining our podcast today.
Speaking of downsides, what the fuck is wrong with the Patriots?
Aren't they undefeated?
They're undefeated in the same way that
Notre Dame was undefeated last year?
Let me put it this way. Tom Brady has nobody, and I don't know how he's pulling what he's doing out of his ass. But
Tom Brady's throwing to two rookie quarterbacks that drop, 50% of or rookie receivers that drop 50% of their passes, a tight end that is going to be in jail for a super long time.
Sounds like a loose end.
You've been waiting months to make that joke, haven't you? Months.
Rise has had that sitting in his little black book, like, all right, this is going to come to fruition at some point.
Let's talk UIs.
Oh,
I got sleep to get to.
Yeah, thanks for keeping us on track.
Yep, in 5. We're ready.
That was a really creepy noise. Whoever
That
just
really
did
was.
That. It sounded like a cat that was having a very terrible experience and turning into something.
I'm thinking
really,
more like
really
an alien. That way, ate an alien, but all right.
The face huggers popping out of the belly.
Yep.
All right, let's roll.
Let's do this.
All right, Chops, you seem to have the momentum, so you kick it off somehow.
Well, I don't know how to kick this shit off. That's your job.
Yep.
I just yell in the background.
Oh, well, shit. All right. We're talking about UIs, guys. And Biggie, it's kind of fortuitous that you're here because you did up a really great guide on UIs that everyone can find, of course, on twinking.net under the guide section.
Hip hip, hooray.
And also, welcome back to the fold. We missed you.
Yeah, thanks.
Good to have you back, man.
We're on podcast. We're in the 30s now.
Jeez.
Good God.
That's crazy talk.
This one, what? It'll come out. This will probably be number 38, I think.
Holy
That
shit.
is crazy.
Isn't it?
Hip hip, hooray for Yubi.
And
Yeah.
we've been talking about 5.4 since podcast 3, and we finally moved on with it. HBO, right? HBO was like, all right, I want to talk about 20 free-to-plays today. I was like, oh, thank God, I'm done with 5.4. I can't do it any longer.
I'm excited about this podcast because I really just getting to hear the variety of approaches and UIs, things that are consistent and then things that are different between what people have. I think it'll give a lot of perspective over how to approach crafting a UI and what to look for in making a UI work for a person.
And also, UI is a very personal thing.
Very.
And what one person thinks is great, another person might be like, dude, it looks like your cat just vomited all over your shit. You need to fix that.
Hey guys, for anybody newbie, can you explain what a UI is really quickly?
Yes. UI
user
is your user interface. When you first start WoW, the way that you interact with the game, what you choose for how to make your abilities have an impact in your environment, that is your UI, that's your user interface. That includes everything from assigning buttons to mods that you might run eventually to, macros aren't part of UI, but they are affected by how you craft your UI.
To further that, a good place to start if you're looking for ways to customize your UI would be curse.com.
Mm-hmm.
It's got, isn't there another one too, like WoW
Ace or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have my Curse subscription, so I just use that, and it lets me update everything automatically, and it's fantastic. But yeah, check out curse.com. You can search for, say, if you're a chamois, you can look at it by class, and you can find things like totem timers and cooldown monitors and stuff like that. But before we get too much into Curse and the specific mods, Rise, what do you think is, let's say, the foundation of a UI?
I'd say the foundation of a UI for me, and I do have a bias as I mostly play a healer, the foundation is your raid frames. How you are going to be able to keep track of the status of your teammates. That to me is the foundation, because interacting with the status of my health going down or is the health going up? How are my teammates doing? Do they have curses on them? Do they have slows? Do I want to purge that off them? All the things that happen data-wise with your teammates happen through your raid frames. And that you need to counterbalance with what's actually going on in the field. The biggest mistake that you can make, and that I made for years as a healer, is to look at nothing but your raid frames. To be like, okay, I'm just kind of the input-output robot. You want your raid frames to really give you as much information as you need, but not so much that it overwhelms you and keeps you from making the quick decisions while still interacting with what's actually going on in the field.
All right, so what are, and you guys chime in when appropriate, what are some ways that you have found that make that process, let's say, more efficient between having your frames, knowing everything that's going on with your teammate, but also having the field awareness and knowing what's going on around you?
By far, for me, the biggest thing, and I'd love to hear other opinions on this because it's going to be different per person, but the position for a healer of your raid frames is a really huge deal. The default WoW interface puts them in the left. So if you're a healer, you are, whether you're using macros to do mouse overs or clicking on stuff, if you're interacting with raid frames, to have your raid frames at the edge of the screen takes you that much more time and your attention away from what's going on in the middle of your screen. I moved my raid frames to bottom center. So I'm looking over my raid frames to see what's going on in the full field, but can still have an eye on all my teammates at the same time.
Wow.
Positioning is a really big deal for me.
And as primarily a DPS player, all of my information, enemy cast bars to interrupt, target of target, focus target, all that stuff, all of my action bars, everything is also middle of the screen at the very bottom. We're going to be including screenshots with our podcast, so you'll be able to see my layout. But everything, with the exception of my party frames and my raid frames and stuff, because I don't need those as much, those are off to the side for me. But all of my vital information is also dead center of the screen at the bottom, so I'm looking over it like Guapo said. So let's go.
So, like, Dak, what do you feel about this? Like, what do you think is a good position for him? Because you're mostly DPS as well, correct?
Yep, I'm DPS, and I'm learning billions in just a few comments that we've had so far. I really haven't messed up my UI. I mean, not messed up, but I haven't changed my UI.
Messed around.
Yes, messed around with my UI very much. I still use the basic WoW one, just because I'm a smart person, but I'm a slow learner. So, like, I have to have it just drained over in me.
Yeah, that's me too.
But I love the idea of having the frames down low. Is that an add-on that you do, or is that?
Honestly, if given the chance, I would prefer, and a lot of people would be like, are you serious? I prefer to use Blizzard's default frames. I have really good luck with those. But the only reason I don't use those is because I can't have them bolted to the left side of the screen. If there were a way to actually get them off the left side of the screen
you can.
for a full battleground.
You just do unlock.
Well,
Never
yeah.
able to get that to work.
There's an add-on called Script. I don't know which one it is, but basically,
I think it's called Move Anywhere, actually.
Yeah, it might be
something like that.
anywhere, but it's basically a scripting add-on, and it just has a whole bunch of scripts that allow you to move stuff.
I have started playing, like when I do arenas at 29s or 90. I have changed everything over to RAID. What is it called?
Interface.
Yeah, RAID interface helps me. I've actually someone said me I was having a lot of trouble with positioning in the war song, and they said if your healer's frame turns a little dark, you're too far away for them. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it just blew my mind.
Yeah, well,
that is
that's
a huge deal. That is a huge
range indicators.
deal.
Yeah,
Those range indicators, people forget about those. Being able to have at a glance whether you're a healer or not, to be able to at a glance see who's in range and who's out of range.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Makes a major impact in your play. That
made a big difference in my, overextending. I see that go dark, and I go, oh, I got to come back. I'm coming back.
Like, wait a second, I'm going to be needing a heal, but I think I'm a yard or two out. Let me hightail it back towards my little friendly neighborhood healer real quick.
Right? So, that's made a big difference.
One thing that a lot of people that's kind of on that tangent, but not really, is some people don't know that you can move your camera distance more than what Blizzard allows naturally with the script, so that also helps a lot. You can come way out, which allows you to see stuff happening behind you.
And exactly how do you go about doing that so everybody knows?
It's hold on, let me make sure that I say it right. It's like max camera angle, and then I use like 43, but macro.
I'll give like we were talking about. I'll give Blizzard a lot of credit for starting to really allow more customization of their UI as they're starting to find out what the really popular features are that people are downloading. Like being able to unlock and move stuff around is not something that they're real big on yet, but their UI has definitely become a lot more informative as far as like we were talking about on-field information, like being able to pay attention to the field, like abilities that trigger at certain points, stuff like that being given to you through the standard UI, like rhyme procs on a DK is a good example. Like you don't have to have a specialized modification to see that pop up because it's built into it. So now you don't have to have an add-on that'll tell you when that's happening.
That is a very good point.
Heals are a lot more clear about who's doing the healing and what kind of heal it is from just watching the standard animations on the screen. Stuff like that. And Blizzard's getting real good about that. So like it used to be when I raided, I had a very involved UI, and there was a whole lot of clutter all over the place. But as Blizzard has updated their UI screens, I'm able to get rid of a lot of that and put just the very vital information down there, stuff that Blizzard hasn't really given me yet, or that I don't like the way Blizzard does it currently.
And going back to what Rye said, as far as ideally just say use the Blizzard RAID frames, I can't recall which patch they actually did that update. But what they did was almost like a grid sort of thing. And for those of you, when I say grid, it's an add-on, which I love, and Rise may or may not like, and Ferd will say, screw you, use Voodoo, or Healbot, I forget which one, but... But what Grid does is you can customize it so you can either have, say, the spell icon or a color block in the corners that indicate what's going on. And when Blizzard updated their RAID frames, they basically made it so you can have that little icon that'll let you know if the person's, say, Nova'd, or if the person has a dot on them. And that's really, as to what you were saying as well, Chops, gone a long way as to, say, reducing some clutter or the dependence on third-party add-ons.
Right. And a lot of it is, all this information is very important to point out for people who might be new. An add-on or modification to your UI is not going to feed you or give you any information that isn't readily available to you in the game already. So you're not cheating if you want to download a mod. It's just that some of that information is buried. And mods make it easier for you to see that information. For instance, if you are, say, a healer, you may not have on the Blizzard UI raid frames dispellable debuffs. I don't know if they do or not because I don't fucking play healer, so I don't know. But on the standard UI, does it show you when somebody's afflicted with a debuff that you can remove? But you could go through, individually click each frame in your party and make sure that each person doesn't have a debuff. You can just sit there cycling through your frames. Or you can download a mod that'll just highlight those people that have the debuff that you can remove.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm such a strong proponent of grid. And I'm sure you could probably do this with other ones. But you can give certain buffs or debuffs priority rankings. So say like something like Unstable Affliction, which has a negative connotation with the Dispel.
Yeah.
That can be number one, which shows up. And you can, say, make it the big icon in the center. You can put it in the corners. You can offset it in the center. But you see that big thing, and you're like, I don't know if I want to do that.
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole point of a user interface. When you do a UI, and that's why it's so different and so personal per person, if you set up your UI, and this takes time. It's just like doing macros and doing keybinds. As you work on your UI, you want your UI to help you play the game and enjoy the game more. If your UI is set up in such a way that it's actually causing things like tunnel vision, or it's causing you things to focus in areas that aren't helpful for you, a UI can actually degrade your gameplay. And I say that as somebody who, for a while, actually, I had a real problem for years with tunnel vision. I mean, people call me out on it all the time, and I just didn't get it. Like, how can people pay attention to so many things at the same time? And the answer is, I really wanted to be able to have my field of play very clear, so I had all my information at the edges of the screen. For some things, for like just quick status checks, that's okay. But for when you're interacting with the players, whether they're enemies or whether they're teammates, when you have everything at the edges of your screen, your mouse, even if you're using mouse overs, your mouse has to go back and forth. Your interaction, especially if you're going from one side of the screen to the other, anything that you can do to minimize your effort, to make it easier for you. That's why a lot of people will have things in the bottom center. So you've got the information that you need, or you've got the interaction stuff that you need. Yeah, you keep the chat in the lower corner or something like that, because maybe you have to glance down there for something that somebody says real quick. That's not, there's no mouse part with that, so you don't have to worry about that part. But if you have to do a quick dispel on someone, and you have to accurately get your mouse half the distance over there, and then either click it or do a key if you've got a key bound to something, the more you increase the complexity of what you do, the harder it is to actually play and enjoy the game. If you do your UI right, it's almost like your own interface invites you to play better.
And yeah, one thing to realize also is that even if you're doing well right now, like if you're thinking, I don't really need a UI, I do pretty well, like you won't realize how not well you're doing compared to how you could be doing until you actually switch. Because until you switch stuff, you don't realize, oh, like this is a lot better.
I'm missing debuffs.
You didn't know that. Yeah, really.
Yeah. The biggest thing is when I first started playing this game.
Did he just die?
Yep, that was his headset.
I will say, for instance, like we're talking about maximizing the knowledge that Blizzard already gives you in game, but say making it more easily available to you. For instance, one of the biggest benefits I've found is using Quartz, Quartz Castbar add-on. I don't like playing with nameplates visible. I think it makes my screen too cluttered and it bothers me. So to compensate for that, I use Quartz to kind of move enemy cast bars around where I need them. Like my target cast bar is real big and pops up right in the middle of the screen, so it's like, oh, I should probably interrupt that, or maybe I don't need to interrupt that. You know, that's I can see fate casts happening a little bit better. Focus target, I can pull that cast bar out and put it real big, so like I can focus charge like a sexy beast. If somebody's healer is about to, cast a big heal on them or something like that. I think that's been, like, cast bars and, like, dispellable debuffs and stuff like that are one of the biggest things I think that you get out of a UI that Blizzard doesn't do very well. while
I agree.
maximizing your potential.
I mean, other things that Blizzard really doesn't do well, there's no real DPS chart, so if you raid, having a DPS chart helps a lot. Not to compare yourself to other people like assholes do, but like to compare what you're doing compared to yourself. So like, oh, when I pop these cooldowns at this time, I do like X more damage, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Huge help, and don't underestimate the help of DPS bars for PvP too, to help you know when
There's
you're
a lot
dumping
of good things
hard.
to measure there. One of the best ways I found to use recount is not so much in the meters that are on the scoreboard, but to measure things like interrupts, purges, stuff like that, to be able to see the actions that I do, or in some cases don't do. You're like, now why did that battleground fall apart for me? It's like, oh, because I forgot that I actually had a CC on my shaman, or I forgot to maybe interrupt once or twice, or maybe 40 times. And if the game went really well, the numbers, you'll start to see a difference that the numbers make. And how that in turn can set up a feedback loop to teach you of how different ways you can make a difference on the field.
Or things that you would never know, for example, dispels. If you don't have something that's on your UI to tell you who is dispelling, that's something that literally makes or breaks RBGs. If one of your healers isn't dispelling, but they're still out healing all of the rest, you might never know. You might never know that your real problem isn't the healer that's not doing any healing. It's the healer that's doing a lot of healing but not dispelling at all, forcing the other healers to not be able to heal at all.
Yeah. It will really shock you, too, to see when you've got recount running and you're starting to measure that for the whole group, and you see one or two people who have 40-some-odd interrupts or dispels, and the rest are like maybe doing 2 or 3 a game. That you start to get some real insight as to why a particular team really succeeded, even though it didn't make sense why they did, or why a team fell apart, even though they had all the numbers stacked in their favor.
And how depressing is it when you're sitting there and you look back at recount and it's like, I really only used wind shear twice.
I know, that's awful.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's such a kick in the face. That's why there were a few times where I'd be playing and I'd be like, God, I feel like I'm, like you guys are saying, I'm doing something wrong. So I'll put recount down in there and have it set to say interrupts. So I know that, all right, come on, dude. You got this kick in your face. Let's use this. Stop being an idiot.
By the way, that macro is /console, camera distance max, and then you can pick a number after that. Usually you want it at like the 50 to like 90 range, but it's the amount of yards that it opens up.
I think that's one of the prejudices of people that they have against using mods and macros, is in some ways it feels like this magic voodoo stuff, where it's like if you're using that, you're hacking the game or doing something that's really uncalled for. And to emphasize that, in a lot of ways, some of Blizzard's choices about how you interact with the game are kind of arbitrary. They're just, it's not that they're good or bad, they're arbitrary choices of where things are put. So we're not talking about revealing, like you were saying, Chops, special information that nobody else has. The information's there, but it can be a pain to get to it. So if you can use something, as in the random example, like Omni-CC, you can see cooldown timers on anything in the game, but to have something, a mod that really emphasizes the number countdown, be like, no, this cooldown only has a few seconds before it comes up. That little bit extra thing can really help.
I relate it to a person who opens their spellbook to click on everything and then learns that they can put it on their bars. It's
the difference
there.
Is that drastic, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
there,
like a natural evolution.
But then, and you're opening your book every time to see the cooldown or see whatever. I'm relating it, and then you learn you can put it on your bar, and you're not opening your book all the time for it. It's the same thing with the cooldowns and the dispels and everything. Once you get these different UIs downloaded, it just makes it much clearer and cleaner.
So if you were starting from scratch and you wanted to build yourself a decent UI, where would you start, guys? Some essential things to download, some essential mods that you might use, and then how would you lay them out?
Okay, so really quick plug. Again, I do have a video that has a lot of the basic stuff that most people have once they get it. So if you're really lost, I would suggest starting there. But really what you should do is go to twitch.tv, go to the World of Warcraft one, look up players that you think are doing well, or like, whoa, that UI looks cool as shit, or that add-on looks cool as shit. nearly 99% of Twitch users will tell you what add-ons they're using. Just figure out what add-ons they're using and play around with them. So, like, for example, I'll give you an example. There's a girl named, I think, Legendary Leah or something like that, and she has this really, really cool add-on where it puts all of the debuffs that other people have on top of their character bars. They're like nameplates, so if you have your nameplates enabled, it puts it on top of them. That is infinitely better than having it on those little bars, because you're actually staring at their characters, so you're more likely to see, oh, that's what that person has, or yeah, I have Vampiric Touch on everyone, and stuff like that.
Another option, just real quick, would be Vile cooldowns. That does the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. The reason I like this one better is just because it's like a little nicer looking, I guess, and it puts.
What is this one, by the way?
I'm sorry?
What is this one? You didn't mention the name.
Let me find out.
And this is a good example of how there can be 2, 3, 4 different add-ons that all do the same thing, but depending on what your preferences are and depending on what you need to know and the kind of way that you like to play, you may prefer one over another, and somebody else may choose something differently.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And there could be little things, too, like, just say Sapped. It's an add-on that does one thing. It lets your teammate know if you're sapped.
Which is excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And you can customize it to, say, put it into party, put it into general, or put it into, say, battleground chat. And that's very important, especially in a pug setting. Like, if you're in a RBG or something like that, people are going to be aware of it anyway. But if you're in a pug, people might not necessarily be aware of the fact that you got sapped. But if you're shouting it out to everyone there, they're like, oh, crap, our healer is sapped, or our FC is sapped. Maybe we should hang back for a second.
Yep.
I think what Biggie said, like watching, like going and finding videos of people, and if you're, especially in twink brackets, guys love putting out videos. So if you've got a twink that you really respect, look up, see what they're doing. I've watched Biggie's UI video, and it's excellent. But find somebody that you enjoy and you think is doing pretty good, and watch what they're doing. And you'll, like I said, find the UIs. That's how I discovered Quartz cast bars. I was watching one of Power Glove's videos, and he had this cast bar pop up right in the middle of his screen. I was like, I want that. I need that. What is that? Tell me. And then, I was watching one of Brumble's many excellent videos, and I noticed all of his stuff is kind of compiled at the bottom center. And I was like, well, hey, Brumble's fucking God. I'm going to do that and see if it works. And let me tell you, it's a huge lifesaver over having to look at all different corners of the screen to find the information you're looking for when it's all just right there.
This add-on's called Plate Buffs, by the way. And the reason it's really cool is it interacts with pretty much all your other add-ons. So if you want a specific way of countdown on the spells and stuff, you can enable that. But the thing about that is the only way I found it is by watching your stream, realizing, whoa, that's a really cool add-on I really wanted, going to Tychondrius, which is where she was on my mage, and asking her, what is that add-on? And she, clearly, freely told me and then put it on her chat for everyone else, realizing that, oh, other people might want this as well and just aren't asking for it. And,
if one person asks, there's at least 100 behind there not wanting to.
Yeah.
And, it made a huge difference because now, instead of having to, actually cycle through an RBG trying to figure out, all right, I know who I have VT on and who do I not have on it, or have it on, I can just look at their plate buffs and just see, okay, well, this person has VT for this much, and then improve my efficiency for getting VT out on people by, a lot, by doing that.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, just think about the cooldowns it saves you, just the reaction time, it's really indispensable.
Yeah, and it gives you a number on top of it, so you can tell which people have, for example, buffed Vampiric Touches. In other words, you put the Vampiric Touch on them when you had a buff on it, and so you know which ones you need to refresh and which ones you need to refresh in a different manner so that you keep that buff.
Oh, wow. So it's like, say, and by buff, I just want to make sure I understand correctly, say you had a Trinket proc and you put the Vampiric Touch with them on that, is that what you mean?
Yeah, so for example, let's say you have Vampiric Touch on 3 people and you really want it on the healer because, that's who you want the VT on most of the times. You want them to get feared if they get dispelled. But you also wanted to do it, pretty good damage, right? So if you get a buff and you're doing, say 4,800 more spell power on that attack, then you want to ensure that lower Vampiric Touch that you had on them, you want the stronger Vampiric Touch on them after that.
Yeah.
And so that helps a lot because you can see what's happening with it.
That's a great example of how, I mean, we talk about UI, and I think that can intimidate someone who's never used it before. Like, oh my God, you're talking about these big changes and changing the whole game around. I have to learn to be a computer programmer, do all this crap and so forth.
No.
And really, it's actually, I mean, you can do that if you really want to, and some people do. You can get really crazy with it. But the vast majority of people, in my experience, and for me, it's my personal experience of what made things the easiest for me, wasn't the big sweeping changes. It was the little things, those little extra touches that really upped my game. And in the same way that knowing which tunes got the buffed vampiric touch on them, playing a shaman as much as I do, having a tiny little add-on that just simply lets me know when I forgot to put a shield on myself. And I'm not a visual person, which is why I failed at that for years at a time.
Shall we bow down to totem timers, or do you use what's the other one called?
Shaman friend.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's just like having something go bong in my ear every time, like, what the heck, we already in the gulch, why did this, oh, I'm missing a water shield because I had an earth shield on myself before, and then I switched the earth shield to someone else and forgot to put the freaking water shield on myself. You know, if I were the most awesome player in the world, I think I'd remember that 10 times out of 10. Mm-hmm. I'm not the most awesome player in the world. Having a little ding of reminder, like a cookie timer, be like, oh, your shield's done, please refresh.
It's like
is
your
great.
seatbelt alarm in your car.
Exactly. It's a seatbelt alarm in your car.
I mean, if you think about it, in the end of Wrath, there was a warlock who at the end of whatever, I forgot which tournament, it was some major tournament, he didn't have Soul Link up. He'd forgotten to refresh it. And so the other team won because they were doing a hell of a lot more damage to him than he was putting out. Mm-hmm. And the entire time, this is like a world-class player, like a player who actually won that tournament but lost that game. You know, didn't have Soul Link, and everyone was just like, he doesn't have fucking Soul Link on. And, like, you know, of course everyone noticed that, and he didn't at all until he saw probably that people were making fun of him. So, like, you know, even world-class players forget stuff, and it's a pretty good idea to have something like that. Why make it hard on
yourself? Have a little bing-ting timer that says, hey, put your shield back on, or bing, you forgot to buff your weapon, or bing, you know, there's
a lot of information out there in the game. Like, a simple game of Warsong Gulch, it's tons of information. So, like, being able to have an add-on that lets you not have to pay attention to that kind of stuff and just like, oh, yeah, hey, time for this totem, time for this shield, oh, hey, my trinket's back up, without you having to sit there and look at it and process that information too, in addition to, oh, this bad guy's casting and I've got to interrupt and there goes the FC, I've got to slow them and blah, 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 blah. Those little simple things, I love timers for those, man. Like, take my mind off of having to mentally calculate, okay, it's about 2 minutes, this guy's trinket might be up now, you know, and let me focus on something else, you know.
Like, how much, if you're in a mid-fight, think about how much is really going on in that scenario. In that, say, 2 minutes where that mid-fight happens, you're going to be having, I don't know, let's just say 10 people. So let's just say 5 on one team, 5 on the other. How many moves, how many spells, how many interrupts do you have to juke if you're a healer? How many CCs do you need to throw out if you're DPS? Let's say you're working about diminishing returns. There's a ton of information that you need to process instantaneously to properly be able to handle what the hell's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note also, one of the major add-ons that's like amazing that I think nearly all good players now use is the I have to remember what's
Battleground targets?
Gladiator Lhasa.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one.
Oh, I'm a terrible player. I haven't even heard of it.
It basically uses a voice, and you can set whatever voice you want to call out when people use stuff. So it'll say, like, you know, premeditation used, or, like, vanish used, and, like, stuff like that. And that allows you to not have to, I mean, that not only make, like, there's nobody who can pay attention to some of the stuff that it calls out. Like, there's just no way that you're going to know. And it just calls it out for you. And it's great because what it'll let you know is stuff, when stuff is up especially, is the important part. So say something like, you know, Blood Fury up. And it's like, oh, okay, here we go. Here comes all the bursts. Or, like, you know, Bestial Wrath up, which, God forbid you're playing against a BM Hunter, you need to know when that one is up.
And Chops, if it makes you feel any better, I play without sound, so I know it's there, but I don't use it because
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Everybody gets mad at me when my sound is on.
I think it varies player to player. I'm not a visual person. I'm much more either kinesthetic, audio, anything but visual. I'm not a visual person.
I like the use of kinesthetic right there.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So having a add-on, or in my case, 4 of them, that actually give me feedback about what's going on in the field in an audio way and not a visual way is really helpful for me. It made a huge difference in my gameplay just because of the type of person I am. Not to be bombarded with visual stuff like that. I just couldn't keep track of all that crap. And while I don't use it now, I used to use, was it mixed scrolling battle text? What was the one that told you when your health is low? The little doo-doo thing.
Oh, there's a few different... The one I have is like, I think it's something dumb, like low health alert.
Yeah,
or
I remember what it
something
was.
like that.
And I don't use that much anymore because my awareness is better than what it used to be. Although, frankly, I should probably go back to using it. But that's the whole point, is there's a lot of things you can use in the audio dimension that can give you a lot of additional feedback that you can bring to the process at the same time that you're doing something visual. Whereas if you're a visual person, audio stuff is just a bunch of cacophony in the background. You're just like, just show it to me on screen. Those are the kinds of decisions that are personal that you really want to make for yourself.
Well, no, you know what? I blame u.N.i.T.Y for the fact that I play without sound. Because I used to have, what's the Aura one? Help me out here.
The Aura
Power
one,
Auras.
Yeah, Power Auras.
And so I set up, like, for my chamois and Rise, you'll know, when you have tidal waves up and things like that, I'd have, like, a gunshot pop.
Oh, my God.
And u.N.i.T.Y broke down and almost reached across the world to try and kill me because he got so sick of it. So I just went completely mute.
Well, the thing is, you shouldn't. I mean, not shouldn't. It's kind of up to you. But I don't play with the Blizzard game sounds on because I don't need that. But I do play with the Gladius Lhasa on. I don't like the Blizzard game sounds because it's distracting, especially if you're playing like on Skype or something. I end up starting to listen to too much stuff at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like playing with sound. I crank my music and go to town, but I'm
I
all
love
visual.
playing with sound because hearing a rogue walk past me and just de-stealth for just a second, I'll never see that. But as soon as I hear
you can go the add-on,
dots on you.
But the add-on will also detect a rogue that's on the other side of Warsong Gold.
Yeah. Keep in mind that add-ons will tell you that. Like, for example, the Gladiator Lhasa will say stealth, and it'll say that very clearly. Oh, okay, yeah.
Wait, Chops, what you said earlier, though, is for, like, really important add-ons. I think, at least personally, the fundamental basic would be how you do your action bars.
Mm-hmm.
And say bartender or dominoes, I guess. I'm not sure if there's another option, but those would probably be the top 2 choices.
Yeah, I personally prefer dominoes.
Yeah. But I think that is huge. And for me, at least, and I don't know if you guys all saw how my UI set up. Rise, you and I have had God knows how many conversations about UIs. But I hide every single button that's not a cooldown.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Dominoes lets me do that. So, I mean, what are your guys' feelings on that?
Absolutely hide that stuff, because the other thing is you don't actually realize how much you needlessly look at your bars to reinforce that you're doing it right until you actually remove it. And for the first week, like, you know your buttons, and still for the first week, your brain is like, oh my God, I can't see it. What am I doing?
Your Pavlovian
and then you get used to it. Yeah. And once you stop having to look at the bars and you realize how much you don't look at those bars, you look at everything else. And that, like, increases what you're looking at and what information you're processing by, like, 2-fold.
But what about... Go ahead, Raz. No,
the biggest thing that I think that when I was back in my earlier WoW, I'm going to say days, earlier WoW years, because it took me this long to glom onto some of this stuff, was I didn't realize how little attention I actually played to the game itself until I started eliminating parts of my interface that I thought I needed, but really didn't need after all that time. Getting rid of seeing where my abilities were and just using nothing but just cooldowns. Just saying, okay, here's my action bar full of cooldowns. I just need to know what's on cooldown, and that's it. That sounds like, I mean, to me at first I was like, that's intimidating. I mean, what if I lose where my stuff is? And the answer is, you've been playing for years. And maybe for some people who are new, maybe in some cases months. You pick up that stuff. You trust your fingers. They will let you know.
Muscle memory is strong.
It's really strong. If it weren't that strong, it wouldn't be such a pain in the ass to change those things later on.
Like, wait, Rise, you might be able to and Chops, and actually Dak, you too, since all of us basically play one class, is that you keep the same buttons. Let's say, like, Rise. For us, we'll probably have Frost Shock be the same button, whether it's a 39 chamois or a 90 chamois.
True.
And you get to the point where, like, I couldn't even tell you what button is, say, Hex, but my thumb knows which button to hit.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, if you ask me what any of my abilities are, then if I try and think about it, I couldn't tell you. But if I just, like, if you ask the ability and I just do it, I can feel the twitch in my finger of which one it is. Like, oh, yeah, that one's Q.
That synapse fires, and you're like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah. And a lot of people, even early on, get that. And trust yourself. Trust yourself, even as a new player, that you will pick that up really quickly. Especially once you don't see it anymore. It's like learning how to touch type. You don't forget where the letters are. Your brain knows where they are. Let your brain do the work for you.
And also, what do you guys think about the real estate that's freed up just from hiding all of that?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Real estate is important, too. One thing also is you should trust your brain. Like, humans are really ridiculous creatures. If you ever need to switch something, like you want to switch to ESF, you want to do Z only like Rectful does, or whatever the hell you decide you want to do, like, your brain will catch up to it in a week. Like, guaranteed 1 week you will be perfectly set. So, yeah, you're going to be awful for that 1 week because you need to figure out your new, like, you want to use OKL to move or whatever the hell you want to do. But then after you figure that out after a week, you're good to go.
I don't know about OKL, but yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't do OKL. But, if that's what you decide you want to do, then...
I think my brain might be a little behind everyone else's. I think I need a little more than a week to catch up to a completely new set. But
there is a point there. It's like, even if it takes, for me, it took, I'm a slow learner on some things, but still, like, the relearning time was nothing compared to how much fun I had, how much more fun I had once I really had an interface that made a difference to me and that didn't stand in my own way.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had to hide a lot of stuff. Like, I put on PvE gear and, like, hid titles and stuff like that back then when I first switched to ESF. Because, like, the first 2 games, I was, like, hitting the wrong buttons. I would, like, bloodlust at the... Like, you know how some people bloodlust at the beginning? And you're like, why does that asshole... That's why that asshole bloodlusts. That's exactly why. And so, that was me, and I was like, alright, well, I'm fucking embarrassed, so I'm going to pretend like I'm awful and just be awful.
Rye, should we talk about how many times each of us have dropped the green ring at the wrong time?
Oh, God.
Not good.
One time we both did it together, even. Like, really?
Oh, Jesus. Even if you've been playing the same thing forever, and, like, you just do a minor switch, those effects will be felt. At least for, let's say, the week grace period.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious. Tell me so we're talking UE changes here. It means all kinds of add-ons that people use, but add-ons specifically for changing your UI. Tell me your favorites. What are the ones that, like, when it's time for a new patch, you're like, I got to get this one updated. This is what I live by.
Bartender, or if you want to use X-Pro, I use Shadow Unit frames.
Shadow Unit.
Yeah.
Way. X-Pearl is so passe.
Yeah, Shadow Unit
big.
frames is sick.
What about you, Dak? What are some of the ones that
also
you
describe
feel
these are for so that people know, because some of these are going to be new for people, and I've never even heard of Shadow Unit frames, so give me a quick explanation of what these are.
Okay. X-Pro does a lot of stuff that looks good on paper, like adding, a picture of the person's face and stuff like that.
And it bogs down your...
Yeah, but the problem is that whoever wrote it is not good at scripting, and so it's a very, very CPU-intensive, lagging UI, and so it really fucks with, like, what you can do, because it slows down your, frame rates, etc. Shadowed Unit Frame instead puts solid bars of color for each player, and just does a really clean, efficient job.
It's so customizable as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's, like, far better. Like, it's basically the equivalent of, like, starting with the Model T and getting to the Ferrari. And it's literally like that, because X-Pro is super old and has not been changed in a long, long time, so it's pretty...
And plus Shadow Unit frames, just with that monotone feel, I think it looks better, actually. And if you really want, you can have that 3D frame with Shadowed as well, but for
Yeah, I don't.
GPU purposes, I
I'll have to check
ignore
that out.
that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
really
I like
nice
it.
add-on.
I like it a lot more than I like Xpearl.
So these are all unit frame replacements or unit frame additions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the essential ones that I always go for are Domino's shadowed unit frames, just because I need everything moved towards the bottom middle. But really, any bar modifier and any unit frames modifier. But I cannot live without quartz. Like my addiction to cast bars is I have to. I can't not have it. I need it. It's probably my essential one.
Well, keep
quartz.
in mind that shadowed unit frames will give you quartz. It comes with it.
Yeah, and not only that, it will give it to you on all available targets in your range. So, I mean, it'll even put the cast bar underneath the health bar of someone that isn't your main target, if possible.
Yeah, I know all that. I just like being able to make a huge, screen length cast bar if I want.
Oh, believe me.
Yeah.
You guys saw my UI. I have the same thing for my target focus target. And that's another thing, too, reinforcing certain things, at least for me, is important. Because I might not catch the first one, so I need to kind of drill it into my brain.
Yeah, I think other ones that are good, tidy plates is pretty good. It cleans up your nameplates for people, makes it look nice. SCADA is personally I think is better than Recount, but it's basically your DPS, dispel, healing thing. It gives you the option to do the Recount style. The Recount style is better for boss fights, but SCADA is better for every single thing other than boss fights. And even in boss fights, it's marginally better because for healing especially, it counts absorbs, which Recount used to not do, and I think it does now.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it does, yeah.
Yeah,
well, no, what
now.
Recount does is it gives you healing, and then it gives a separate thing for absorbs.
Oh, right, yeah. And you can split it same way the other way.
Yeah.
But it made a difference because I remember in ICC, people did not know that Disc Priests were good because they didn't realize how much healing absorbs did, so people would talk shit to Disc Priests for doing shitty healing, and it was like, no, he's actually doing triple your healing, buddy, it's just you don't know because you're bad.
Yeah. I would have to put Grid up there as about as important it can get, and if we really feel the need, I can get into stories as to why. But without Grid, I'm a lost soul, which is probably a fault on my part, but that's just how accustomed I am to the way I make my UI. I'd also have to say Vile cooldowns so I can monitor interrupts as playing primarily a healer, knowing when that kick is on cooldown or wind shear and etc. is definitely clutch, and have to go with Domino's as well.
This is a good example of seeing some compare and contrast of what really works for a person. I tried Grid, and one of the things that just didn't work for me, and maybe it's because I didn't spend enough time with it, is Grid likes to represent things in colors, just solid bar colors, and that annoys the crap out of me. Seeing different colors doesn't trigger anything in me. Memorizing different colors, what they actually mean, I can't do it. So I ended up using something called Compact Rate instead, because I was still able to see when there's an unstable affliction on somebody, I saw that as tiny as the icon was, I could pick up on that right away. And I don't know why. I don't know why that makes such a difference for me. But the whole solid bar color thing doesn't work for me, while the tiny icon really does.
Well, that goes into, I guess, more into getting into the add-on in itself.
It could just be the configuration, absolutely.
Yeah, because you can, how I was saying at the beginning, you can make unstable infliction be huge in the center of that person's let's say grid frame.
Yeah.
And so you know that's there. And for me, the colored dots are just second nature. If I look and I see a yellow dot in the bottom left, I know they have Earth Shield on them. If I see a purple dot in the bottom right, I know they have Riptide. If I see a purple dot in the top right, I know there's something I should be dispelling, and so forth and so forth. So it's just...
that kind of configuration can really help. But for me, even though I was messing with locations of stuff, colors just didn't do it for me. But there's a good point that I think we've all touched on it here and there, is that a lot of these add-ons can overlap each other, which is why you'll see such variety here.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Biggie, you mentioned tidy plates as can be helpful for people, and as well as plate buffs. And I actually use both of those.
Me too.
Part of it is because I couldn't get, I wanted certain things out of both of them, and I couldn't figure out how to get them on each other, so I just...
They don't overlap, I don't think.
No? Okay, maybe that's why I couldn't find a way to do it.
Yep.
But those are the two that I found really helpful as a healer, to be able to keep track of what's going on the field in front of me. those are. It's one of those things where they don't do that much. They don't look like they do that much, but without them, it's much harder for me to keep track of what's going on the field. So those are two essentials for me, alongside of Shaman Friend, which is just, it does so little, but what it does do is essential to keep disasters from happening on field if I'm paying attention to something. I really like having my bottom center location for my bars, so I use Bartender for that. I don't really use Bartender for much other than basically as almost a cooldown monitor, which is to say I use OmniCC with Bartender to show me what's on cooldown, bottom center, and that's pretty much, that's my only use for those. I'm really surprised I haven't heard more about battleground targets.
That was my next one. Yeah, that's a must-have.
That's a must-have.
Yeah, that actually should have been included in all of ours, probably.
Yeah, that's something. It is such a tremendous boon. All it does is it just gives you an active, updated list of your enemy team in a little box.
Oh, Jesus, what about capping? But I guess that we can do that next. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll get to that one next. That's another essential one. But battleground target, like I'd probably give up even my plate buffs before I give up battleground targets, just to be able to see what the enemy team is, who's where, and what their status is. And it doesn't even work that well for monitoring their health. I don't even use it for that. But if you're going to play organized PvP on a battlefield, being able to immediately attack, mouse over, click, whatever, the hard switch that gets called out, or say, hey, peel this person off of me. If you say, if someone calls out who you got to peel off of, blammo, Frost Shock Root, that guy in battleground target, because you can spend an extra 4 seconds figuring out where the hell are on the field. As long as they're lit up and in range, that's all you need. Battleground targets, blammo, you're good to go.
Right. And, yeah, essential fucking battleground. You won't see it in my UI that I post here because it's fucking free to play 20s. I'm not going to worry about it. I disable it because I'm not playing RBGs. But yeah, essential battleground modification.
Other ones are, I don't know if any of you guys use MSBT. I think one of you guys talked about it already. I think Chops did.
Yeah.
Yeah, MSBT is mixed scrolling. Yeah, battle text. It's really, really, really nice because what it does is you can customize everything, but you can put abilities, you can put, damage, all of that stuff, and it basically scrolls the text wherever you want it. I think sometimes putting the heals and damage, unless you're streaming, is overkill because you don't really need to see it, but some of the abilities it shows is really nice to have.
Yeah, I use SCT a lot. Just because it helps me, I don't want to have to look at my action bar to see that execute is up. It pops up execute right in the middle of my screen. Oh shit, time to execute, right? That kind of stuff, yeah. Triggered abilities, stuff like that, man, yeah. I had completely forgotten that I use scrolling combat text until you mentioned that, yeah. Fuck yeah, that thing's awesome.
Other ones, we've already talked about Gladiator Lhasa. I would get that. Mogget, if you like mogging, is really, really nice. It allows you to see everything in the game that you can possibly mog ever.
Amazing.
And you can filter it by color.
You can filter it by color, yep.
You can do so much with it.
Yep, and he's continually changing it, so there's a lot of other stuff. Really quick, it's a shout-out to A. Lobin. He's a twinker. He's
and
the
you've
creator.
heard his name many times.
Yeah.
Many times.
If you are trying to figure out how the hell your enchant scale and your gem scale bracket to bracket, you're looking at that unbelievable database that quote-unquote that guy put together, that guy is a Lobin.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I also want to throw out another one for tracking cooldowns is Fort Exorcist. I think that's a great add-on. And basically what it does is it gives you a bar, and you can make it as big or small as you want, and it will do it by seconds and have a big icon on it. And you can also use that to track personal buffs and buffs that you put out on other people.
So the bar is like a timeline.
Yes. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
So that's another visual way to be able to keep track of cooldowns. That's another good way to do that. Someone mentioned capping. I think that's a really essential one as well.
Oh, yes. You want us to say what that is?
Yeah, capping, Blizzard's added a couple things in the interface to show who's got the flag in Warsong Gulch and so forth. Capping is when you see someone put into party chat that the blacksmith is going to get capped in 53 seconds or that will win Arathi Basin in 3 minutes and 24 seconds, capping is the one keeping track of all that. It shows you literally if there's a node to cap or if someone's got a flag, it basically shows you that and you can move that whatever that display to anywhere on the screen. So even though Blizzard's done a nice job to get started on showing you that, capping, again, to me is another essential Battleground add-on, just to give you information in a very compact way that can be really helpful for you and your teammates.
I have another small add-on to say, and this just might be personal preference, but I enjoy Sexy Map, and the reason for that is it lets me move the main map that you have, not like your Shift-M BG map, but you can put it wherever you want.
Your mini-map, you mean?
Yeah. And so it traditionally would be in the top right. If you want, you can put it, say, bottom center. And if you're really into aesthetics, you can give it a whole bunch of cool different looks. I traditionally like the simple square, and I just put that right next to my Battleground map. But that's just another small thing, like SASAP, that just like a quality of life, let's say, thing.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I've got another one. Please don't laugh at me, because I do actually consider this really important. I'm going to preface it with please don't laugh at me. There used to be, I don't know if anybody uses it because this is all PvP discussion, but there was a mod called Deadly Boss Mods. That was...
I don't know, I'm just kidding. That's definitely a must-have. That, by the way, does the timers for you in BGs, too.
That is true.
Yeah,
there's a PvP version for that as well.
It does the timers and BGs, which is always really helpful. But one of the things, I'm sure a ton of other ads do it, but one of the things I find really helpful is you can set a timer for anything. If you know that in, 10 minutes into this fight, this boss fight, there's not something that's triggered by DBM, you can set a 10-minute timer and call it X event, right? You can call, X event anything, right? What I find, they call it in Deadly Boss Mods the pizza timer. And I actually use it for that. And I think it's one of the most helpful things I've gotten, because I'll order a pizza and it'll say, pizza showing up in 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So I'll set a timer for about 30 minutes. Laugh all you want, but when I see that thing starting to get low, I don't go pick up the flag and a pug. I don't go put myself in a position where me AFKing might cost us the game. That's one of the add-ons I use. It's
that might be the most socially responsible add-on use I've ever heard.
That might be the greatest use of an add-on in the history of add-ons. That is amazing.
That's fantastic. I loved Deadly Boss Mods. I used to use it for PvP. That used to be one of my must-haves go-to. And for the timers were great. It wasn't until I switched to capping that, because that was when I went to exclusively to PvP, and that was the only thing I was using, I was like, all right, I don't need any more warnings. I just need to know that I wanted to use a smaller add-on that didn't take up as much processing time on my aging computer.
We should also, I guess, put the disclaimer in with capping that in order for capping to work properly, there need to be other people in the BG with capping as well. Because if you're using capping, and you'll see at one point where you can see the EFC's health percentage, if the person that has that installed, let's say, dies and is in the graveyard, and the other person there doesn't, all of a sudden you have no idea what the health percentage is at.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great example of how mods don't show you any more than you wouldn't already know. So,
right.
if someone's focus target is the EFC, yeah, they'll be able to show you what the EFC's health is. But if the EFC's out of range, it can't show you that. It's not capable of doing that in the game. So to have a mod like capping be able to give you that information without you having to keep an eye on your friend's targets of targets for half the game and distract you from a gazillion other things, that's the purpose of an add-on. That's an add-on done well.
I think another one, OmniCC, puts a timer on everything.
Did we not mention that yet?
I don't think so.
I think we mentioned it before, but it bears repeating.
Yeah.
You should get that. Pratt's pretty good, too. That's
one I was going to say, just as like a little one at the end.
Yeah, it's a text add-on. It lets you click stuff outside of chat, lets you copy-paste, lets you put a whole bunch of chats. Like if you, for example, saw something funny in chat, copy-paste into your guild, or you can just straight link it to the guild. Mostly it's nice because of the linking thing, because if people link you stuff, it sucks to have to alt-tab and type it in or put it into your other computer or whatever you do.
And that in itself is worth the download, because it saves you 20 minutes being like, all right, HTTP word
really?
/
I use Chatter. Another one does the exact same thing, depending on what you like.
I use WoW Instant Messenger, just Wim. That was Golden Claw turned me onto that one.
I was just about to say, he told me I should get that.
It's what's neat about it is not only does it separate people who whisper you into different boxes, which is really helpful if you're throwing together an impromptu group or something, but it also, if you're in the middle of a fight, if you're in combat, it takes all those boxes off your screen. Like, it knows that you don't want to see that crap in the way while you're in the middle of fighting something.
Does it not? He told me that it saves messages. Like, say you log off and someone sends it, like, a second after you. So he told me it saves it. Is that correct?
Yeah, if your UI picked it up, then then it can be recorded. Absolutely.
Neat.
Yep,
I gotta do
Overachiever, if you're into achievements, is pretty good. It tracks everything, and it puts notes next to all items in WoW, all people in WoW, all BGs in WoW, letting you know what you're missing.
All right, if we're going into alt stuff, Auctioneer, that probably deserves a mention, right?
I wouldn't. Yeah, Auctioneer is pretty good. I would suggest using Auctionator over Auctioneer because Auctionator adds a couple more options that Auctioneer doesn't give you.
I haven't heard of Auctionator.
Pencil and pad.
Yeah, Auctionator. The main thing, what I would do is I would get something called TSM, Trade Skill. Actually, I don't actually know what this is. Trade Skill Master. What that lets you do is that lets you queue your stuff in. So, for example, if you're a blacksmith and you need to make 50 of these and 10 of those and 30 of those and you don't want to click it, or worst of all, if you're a fucking inscriptionist and you don't want to click the fucking mill button and then click...
Wait, there's something that can get me out of that? Because I wish I would have known that while I was making that 80.
Masters will let you do that. You can queue up things. So, like, I want 5 of these, 7 of these, 4 of these, 3 of that, 2 of this of that, and you can put it. Now, here's where it gets crazy. If you're standing next to the auction house, it will put it up on the auction house for you as well. So, you can, like, with that and Auctionator tracking it, you can literally automate your entire auction thing. And here's where it gets... crazy and crazier. You know how there are people who make, like, where you see just every time you put up a glyph, it's like, fuck, this person already undercut me? That's TSM doing that.
All right, Rise.
They're not even there doing it.
Rise, we're going to have to implement this on my Inscriptionist. That's the 80.
Hold the fucking phone. Will this get you out of having to fucking click, like if you're leveling and chanting, having to like click the same fucking bracer thing over and over and over again?
It gets you out of all of that.
Oh my god, Dark Moon Fair, I love
groundbreaking.
Really quickly, I would also highly suggest, as somebody who's leveled enchanting way too many times, don't do the bracer thing. Do it on buy like the 1 copper piece of paper thing, the vellum, because then you don't have to be like, are you sure you want to re-enchant this? It's like, no, I just misclicked it again for the 50th time. So.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Good point.
Yeah, and by the way, just for the grammar Nazis out there, please, it's scribe. It's not inscriptionist. You're gonna kill me.
No, Rise. It's inscriptionist.
You're right.
All right.
It's inscriptionist. Look.
We've had this talk. It's inscriptionist, and that's just the way it's going to be.
All right, now that that's settled.
Remember, keep clam and proofread.
Let's see, other add-ons. I think we've scrolled almost everything that I have. Sexy cooldown 2 is pretty good. It puts a little bar to your left that has a timer as your cooldowns go down. So, 4 minutes on this, 3 minutes on that. It puts a bar. It makes the spell really big in your face when it comes off cooldown. Sexy map gives you really cool looking maps, especially if you don't like your map at the top right in the middle of nowhere.
I use Chinchilla Minimap for the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, but Chinchilla is just a fake hedgehog, so no one... Or,
you messed that one up.
No, was it? Yeah, I did. All right, let's move on.
If you're into stats and numbers, Reflex is a good add-on to keep track of scoreboard stuff basically over a series of battlegrounds. It's good. I found it helpful in RBGs to see my performance and to be able to get a feel for what teammates were and weren't doing and how I could support them or otherwise work with them. It's sort of like a big picture stats program.
One thing, and you guys let me know, we're talking about all these add-ons, but is one of the not most important things not only how you gather the information, but how it's displayed in a manner of which it doesn't impede your gameplay?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's in some ways, like when I go through my add-on list here, I can't believe how many I have, which compared to most people really isn't that many. But the reason I have so many is because I'm such a snob now when it comes to wanting my interface to tell me exactly what I need and nothing extra, because I know how much of a difference that's made for me. So in a lot like that, having tidy plates and plate buffs on there, that's a lot. Those are two major add-ons. But I actually only use a couple of features from all the stuff that they do from each of those add-ons. They're so fundamental to what I need, but they can do a gazillion things, none of which I want or need, so I turn all that crap off. And I can say that for a lot of the add-ons I have. Bartender does an amazing number of things, none of which I could give a crap about. All I want is some program that basically groups up my buttons in a way that makes it easiest and non-obtrusive so that I can use OmniCC, not the bartender stuff, to be able to track cooldowns. That's all I use it for, and that's
Let's be honest, Rise. You just are sick of hitting shift scroll wheel.
Pretty much.
That tendon is just broken. So, yeah, absolutely. It sounds like we use a ton of add-ons here, but I would bet if people looked at the interface, it's like, well, actually this doesn't look something. You can make some crazy interfaces, but these aren't it. It's just a little extra couple things here and there. You wouldn't even notice what Shaman Friend's doing on the mine. All you see is like, well, he's got his earth shield up, or he's got his water shield up. And then if for some reason it disappears, a little message comes up, and I can hear the gong go off, like bong, enchant missing, or bong, shield missing.
I need to get Ooch back just for with you one night so he can just scream at you like he used to scream at me.
That might be worthwhile. Just to troll Ooch with my interface.
I bet Ooch would love that. He's probably just like, you know what I really need? I just really need to see a really shitty UI so I can get pissed off again.
That's right.
That's what I need to see in my life. That would be really awful. So yeah, I guess on a macro level, UIs really are just like the best and most efficient way for you to get whatever information that you need in order to be a better player. And really whatever gets you that information is kind of what you should be using.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It is a ever-evolving process. I remember the first time I figured out, because like Biggie, how you were saying, watch videos of people that you think are good, and you'll get ideas on how to do it. I watched a video where someone didn't have their buttons in that standard Blizzard UI layout. I was like, how is that even possible? I was like, this is magic. What the hell? And then I figured out, and at this time it was Bartender. So I downloaded Bartender, and I put all my buttons in a cute little rectangle in the middle of my screen. And I was like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. It can't possibly get better than this. Mm-hmm. And then some time goes by, all of those disappear. And then I have like my cooldowns on the side. I'm like, this is fantastic. And I'm like, wait, I don't need all those cooldowns on the side. There are some that I can just rely on, say, with Fort or through Omni or something like that. I'm like, oh my god, this gets even better. And then you find things like, oh, another add-on, KG panels. If you guys are really into aesthetics, KG panels can make you have your UI look dead goddamn sexy.
And let's be honest about this. For the same reason you're going to spend hours transmogging your character, we're talking about transmogging your UI in some ways here,
Yeah!
Spend the time on it. You'll love it. And it'll actually even make you a better player. And that's, to go back to one of the things that you said, where it's like, there's not a right or wrong way to do this. And generally speaking, that's true. For any specific player, there is absolutely right and wrong ways to do things. That will change player to player and can even conflict drastically. But for you, there is a right and wrong way to do things, and until you experiment with stuff, you'll never know that. A great example is, I remember you sending me a screenshot of your UB, and I saw you on the left and right, you've got cooldowns and vertically. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever. I'm like, oh my god, that's a great idea, because you can see all your cooldowns right there, and it almost serves like a kind of crosshairs, like aiming something. I loved it, and I tried it for 2 weeks, and it was a disaster for me. And
you
it's
moved
one of those
them
things,
to the bottom center.
It was, again, I had to move to the bottom center. And the reason why it didn't work for me is because it took me from a bad tunnel visioner to a worse tunnel visioner. I was just kind of like, I can see the dead center of my crosshairs, and that's all I would pay attention to. Well, it was amazing how I blacked out the rest of my screen. You
saying the crosshairs brings me up to one add-on that I really, really like, but I feel like a lot of people won't like, specifically for your crosshairs reference, is Ice HUD.
The hell is that?
Ice HUD enables
Ice HUD.
Yeah, I figured you would, but I like iShut. It enables you to basically make crosshairs of your health mana, enemy's health mana, focus target, target of target, whatever. But it's literally in the middle of your screen. They can be straight lines, curved lines, however you want to set it up, but it's right there in the middle. And I find that to be, for me, much better. But for someone like Biggie, he's like, no, that's blasphemy, you terrible heathen.
There it is. That's in a nutshell. That's where it's like you can find multiple ways of success, but there are things that will definitely work for you, and there are things that will definitely not work for you. And until you start experimenting with it and playing with this, you may not have any idea how much your UE is killing you, literally on the field killing you, until you start playing with this stuff and figure out, why was I ever doing it this way? And the answer is you just simply didn't know.
And I'll leave it. I'll make my last statement and tread off here. One, if you ever find yourself thinking, man, I wish I could blank, or I really wish there was a way to blank, there's an add-on out there that does it.
There's an app for that.
Yeah, there's an app for that. Man, I really wish there was a way for me to know what the enemy flag carrier's health is at, even though I'm healing our flag carrier across the map. Conveniently, there's an app for that. So know that. Like if there's ever something, like I found myself one time wishing, man, I wish my DK's runes were right in the middle of my screen. Come to find out, there is.
Oh, guess what? iShut lets you put that whatever you want. So.
Yeah, whatever. But cool. So the other thing I would very strongly recommend is to start small. Don't go downloading every add-on you heard us mention because, holy shit, these guys play with this list of 25 add-ons, and I have to have these add-ons.
So
start small.
Piece of advice.
Grab yourself, find yourself really wishing, oh, man, I wish my character plate frame and my enemy's character plate frame were more towards the middle of my screen. Well, go download shadowed unit frames, play with that for a couple of days, find out where you want it. And then you're like, man, I like this, but I really wish my action bars were up there with them. Okay, go download Dominoes and do it one at a time, or otherwise you're going to end up with a bunch of superfluous add-ons that you don't really need, and they're telling you all sorts of things, and there's things blinking on your screen. And what that leads to is you've got this situation where something's happening that you don't want to have happen, but you've downloaded 50 add-ons in the past 2 hours, and you have no idea which add-on's doing it.
Which one's doing it? Oh, my God. Yeah, you got pinball syndrome.
And so you're just like, I can't handle this. Add-ons are crap. I'm out. Like
you have the missile command of add-ons. You have 50 of them coming at your face, but only one missile that can fire back at a time.
That would be my word of advice for the overarching theme of this podcast is start small.
That is a great piece of advice, and I want to reemphasize that in that I've got 15 different add-ons here. That did not happen overnight. That is over the course of 2 years, and me being very conservative of saying, I want this one thing. That's what it was. I'm like, I just can't get this one piece of information. It's driving me bonkers. There's got to be an add-on for that. I'm going to go find it.
I remember... This was, I want to say, about 3 years ago. I spent, I shit you not, like 3 days working on my UI. I sent a screenshot of it to Mangry. Mangry sent back, this looks like someone tried to make a skate park in Tony Hawk, but was on acid. And I was like, I looked at it again, and I was like, holy crap, you're right. This is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. So then I spent another few days and got it to a good point. But that point that I got it to, completely different than the way it is now.
It's no different than when you work with macros or redoing your keybinds. Add-ons and getting your interface in a place that you like takes time and takes revision, and your tastes will change. But while it sounds like, oh my God, these guys are obsessed, they're spending years of time getting these things refined, it's like they're doing the CrossFit of add-ons or something. What the hell is this?
We are now Olympic certified trainers in the add-on.
It's really not
category.
like that. It's just one of those things where you have gradual risk, gradual reward. You download that one add-on and you find that you play a little bit better. You're like, okay, well, that was worth it. You download this next add-on, you mess with it, and it's like, oh, that was definitely not worth it. But then you tweak it a little bit and like, okay, that's what I needed. And gradually, over the course of the time, life gets better and better with that way.
Yep, I usually quit, well, pretty much every 2 months on the dot, or so, 2 to 3 months, and
We'll call you Pink.
Yeah, and I always get new add-ons, and like I completely reset my UI, and that's how I figure stuff out. So like a while ago I started changing my keybinds to ESF instead of WAD, or I'd switch to like target macros instead of this, or I'm gonna try playing with the UI over here and targets over here, and let me try moving here and stuff like that. And so it's really helpful to every once in a while, even if you just need to start a new character to get out of the grind that you're in, just to shake things up and do something completely different, because you really do get used to what you're doing, and then you'll start not realizing what you're doing wrong and what you could get better at. And so every once in a while it helps to just kind of switch stuff up, and even if it doesn't help you, like even if, okay, now I'm worse because of it, all right, then you change it, but what it does give you a glimpse into is, oh, I'm not as good because of this thing. I bet if I got something that helped me here, maybe I would be better. And then you can look at what you need and stuff like that. So that's really helpful to have.
That's good advice.
I'm not sure we can end much better than that.
Yep.
Does anyone want to put a final touch on this before we call it?
I think it's time for our bow.
Biggie.
Oh, God. What?
That was a pretty good end, but I'm asking for a better. What you got?
So user interfaces are, like it says, user interfaces. So really we're just giving you tips that helps us as users have better interfaces. You should figure out what makes your user interface good for you. Sort of like the Tron movie. What is it? I fight for the
I fight for the user.
I fight for the user. Let your interface fight for you.
Alright, guys, we all fight.
Yes, we ended on a Tron reference. Oh my God, my nerdy little heart just beat a little faster.
Wow. Oh, we'll catch y'all next week.
Excellent. Well done, guys.
Beautiful work, people.
Oh, I missed you, Biggie.
Yeah.